I've spent 5 years day trading profitably, and I need to tell you something nobody else will. The biggest threat to your trading success isn't bad strategy, lack of capital, or even the markets themselves. It's the people closest to you. Here's what most traders get wrong. They think sharing their trading goals will create accountability and support. Reality: the moment you tell friends and family you're learning to trade, you've just invited an army of doubters to plant self-limiting beliefs in your head. My trading mentor learned this the hard way during his 7-year journey to profitability. Everyone doubted him, even his own wife. They called it gambling, told him to get a real job, brought up that one friend who lost everything. But he stayed silent, stayed focused, and eventually proved them all wrong. The same people who doubted him later begged him to teach them. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why silence is your most powerful edge as a developing trader, how other people's conditioning sabotages your belief system, and the one reality about who genuinely wants you to succeed that my mentor taught me, a lesson that completely changed how I approach not just trading, but life itself. Welcome to Trader's Bible, the quiet room for market mastery. Let's get into it. Let me start by saying something that might sound extreme. From the moment you decide to pursue trading seriously, you need to implement what I call an information blackout. This means you intentionally withhold your pursuit of trading from friends, family, coworkers, and peers until you've reached consistent profitability. And I don't just mean being vague about it. I mean complete radio silence. Don't mention you're studying charts. Don't casually bring up that you opened a brokerage account. Don't tell people you're looking into the markets. Nothing. Now, most beginner traders hear this advice and immediately resist it. They think, but wouldn't telling people create accountability? Wouldn't it help to have a support system? And I get it. That's how we're conditioned to think about goals in general. You want to lose weight? You tell your friends. You want to start a business? You share your vision. But trading is fundamentally different. And here's why. When you tell someone you're learning to trade, you're not just sharing information. You're opening yourself up to what I call cognitive noise. External opinions that act like static interference on a radio signal, distorting your ability to think clearly about your own trading journey. Let me give you a real example of how this plays out. You've been studying for 3 weeks. You're starting to understand support and resistance. You're feeling genuinely excited because for the first time, price action is starting to make sense. You sit down for dinner with your family, and someone asks what you've been up to. You mention you're learning to trade. Immediately, your uncle jumps in. "Oh, trading! My buddy Dave tried that back in 2008, lost his entire retirement account, wiped out, had to go back to work at 62 years old." Your mom chimes in. "Isn't that just gambling? I read that 95% of day traders lose money." Your brother, who works in corporate finance, gives you that condescending smile and says, "You know algorithms and institutional traders control everything now, right? Retail traders don't stand a chance." Now here's what just happened psychologically. 3 weeks ago, you didn't even know what a candlestick was. You've been working hard, putting in hours every single day, and you're finally starting to see progress. Your confidence is building. But in one 15-minute conversation, 3 people who have never placed a trade in their lives just planted seeds of doubt in your mind. That night, you sit down to study your charts. But now there's a voice in the back of your head. What if they're right? What if this is just gambling? What if I'm wasting my time? That's cognitive noise. And the dangerous part, you didn't even realize it was happening. This is why the information blackout isn't just a suggestion. It's your first layer of defense in psychological risk management. Think about it this way. When you're developing a trading strategy, you back test it, right? You want clean data. You don't want your back test contaminated by random noise or irrelevant information. Your mindset works the same way. During the learning phase, you need a clean psychological environment where your only feedback loop is the market itself, not the uneducated opinions of people who've never studied price action a day in their lives. But let's go deeper, because there's something more insidious happening beneath the surface. When people tell you trading is gambling or a scam, they're not actually making an objective statement about trading. They're projecting. What they're really saying is, I couldn't handle that level of risk. I couldn't imagine a lifestyle outside the traditional path. I need the security of a paycheck every 2 weeks. But they don't have the self-awareness to recognize that's what they're doing. So instead, they frame it as concern for you. I just don't want you to lose your money. I'm trying to help. This is what I call social projection as a self-limiting contagion. Think about the word contagion for a second. When someone has the flu, you don't sit there and debate whether viruses are real. You just know that if you're around them long enough, you're probably going to get sick too. Doubt works the exact same way. It spreads, it infects. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening until you're already compromised. My trading mentor experienced this firsthand. During his 7-year journey to profitability, he heard every possible variation of doubt. People brought up statistics. 90% of traders fail in the first year. They brought up horror stories. My friend's cousin lost his house trading options. They brought up systemic arguments. The game is rigged against retail traders. And here's the thing. Some of those statements have kernels of truth in them. Yes, most traders do fail. Yes, people have lost significant money. Yes, institutional players have advantages. But none of that is relevant to whether you can succeed with the right framework, discipline, and consistency. The problem is that when you hear these things repeatedly, especially from people you trust, it creates subconscious self-doubt. You might be executing your strategy perfectly. Your technical analysis might be sound. Your risk management might be on point. But somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this nagging voice asking, what if I'm just lucky? What if this doesn't last? What if they're right and I'm wrong? That internal conflict shows up in your trading. You hesitate on entries. You exit winners too early. You second-guess your process. And suddenly, you're not trading your strategy anymore. You're trading your fears. By maintaining information blackout, you eliminate this entire dynamic. Your mind stays clean. Your feedback comes from one source, the market. Did your trade work? Yes or no? Was your analysis correct? Yes or no? Are you following your rules? Yes or no? There's no room for contamination from people who don't understand what you're doing. Now, before I go further, if you're finding value in this breakdown of the psychological game within trading, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Most trading channels focus purely on strategy and technical analysis. But here at Trader's Bible, we focus on the quiet truths nobody else talks about. The psychology, the mindset, the framework for long-term success. That's what separates consistently profitable traders from everyone else. All right, let's keep going. Here's where this gets really uncomfortable. And I need you to hear this clearly because my mentor taught me what he called the harsh truth of success. He sat me down early in my training and said, "Most people don't actually want you to succeed." I remember pushing back on that. I said, come on, that's too cynical. My friends want me to do well, my family supports me. And he looked at me and said, "Really? Let me ask you this. What happens to their worldview if you succeed?" That question changed everything for me. Think about it from their perspective. Let's say you have a friend who works a 9-to-5 job. He commutes an hour each way. He sits in a cubicle for 8 hours. He makes $65,000 a year. He's been doing this for 7 years, and he's convinced himself it's fine. Everyone has to work, he tells himself. Yeah, this is just what adults do. He's built an entire identity around accepting that reality. Now you come along and start day trading. At first, he doesn't take you seriously. But then 6 months pass, and you're consistent. A year passes, and you're profitable. 2 years pass, and you've quit your job. You're making more than him. Working from home, traveling when you want, answering to nobody. What does that do to his worldview? It destroys it. Because now he has to confront an uncomfortable truth. Financial freedom was possible all along. He could have taken that risk. He could have learned a skill that generates income without a boss. But he didn't. He chose safety. He chose the conventional path. That realization is painful. It forces him to question everything. Why didn't I try? Why did I settle? Why did I accept this life? And for most people, that's too much to process. So instead of celebrating your success, instead of being genuinely happy for you, they experience something else entirely. Envy. They don't want you to fail because they're bad people. They want you to fail because your success is a mirror that reflects their own inaction. This is the envy trap, and it's everywhere. Your coworkers who stayed in the corporate grind, your college friends who took out $100,000 in student loans to get jobs they hate, your family members who sacrificed their dreams for stability. On some level, conscious or not, many of them need you to fail. Because if you fail, it confirms their worldview. See, I was right to play it safe. Trading doesn't work. Nobody beats the market. I made the smart choice. But if you succeed, that's threatening. That challenges everything they believe about how life works. My mentor learned this the hard way. The people who doubted him most during his journey, his own family members, close friends, were noticeably quiet when he became profitable. They didn't apologize for their doubt. They didn't celebrate his achievement. Some of them barely acknowledged it. But you know what happened? Within months, those same people were asking him to teach them. The ones who called it gambling suddenly wanted in. The ones who said it was impossible suddenly thought they could do it too. That's the harsh truth. Most people don't want you to succeed while you're struggling, but they'll want to benefit from your success once you've made it. And understanding this dynamic is crucial because it explains why silence is so powerful. When you work in silence, you avoid the development of what I call social friction. The added weight of other people's jealousy, doubt, and sabotage that makes an already difficult journey even harder. Trading is lonely enough as it is. You're sitting in front of screens while everyone else is at happy hour. You're studying market structure while your friends are watching Netflix. You're risking capital and dealing with losses while people around you are collecting safe paychecks. That path is already psychologically demanding. Why would you add the burden of defending your choices to people who will never understand them? Let me give you a practical example of how social friction manifests. You have a rough trading week. You took 3 losses in a row. Your win rate is down. You're questioning your strategy. You're in that uncomfortable space where you need to review your trades, identify mistakes, and adjust. This is a critical moment in your development as a trader. You need clarity. You need focus. But then you go to a family gathering and your cousin who told you trading was a bad idea asks, "So how's that trading thing going?" You say it's been a tough week. He smirks and says, "Yeah, I figured. That's why I stick to my 401k. Now you're angry. Now you're defensive. Now instead of going home and doing productive analysis, you're stewing in frustration, trying to prove him wrong, letting your ego drive decisions instead of your strategy. That's social friction. It pulls you out of the trader mindset and into the emotional reaction mindset. And emotions are poison in trading. The information blackout prevents this entirely. Nobody knows you're trading, so nobody can comment on your wins or losses. Your psychological state remains stable, focused entirely on improvement rather than validation. But here's the sophisticated part that most traders miss. The goal isn't to hide your success forever. The goal is to let your lifestyle do the talking. This is what I call proof of concept through equity, not through words. Instead of telling people you're making money trading, you show them through tangible changes in your life. You buy an investment property. You upgrade your car. You take 3 vacations a year instead of 1. You're home when everyone else is commuting. You have time freedom that others don't. These changes communicate success in a way that words never could. Because here's the reality. Even when you're consistently profitable, even when you've been doing this for years, skeptics will still doubt you. I've had this exact experience. I've been profitable for 5 years. I day trade full-time. This is my career. And I've sat across from finance professionals who work at hedge funds, told them I day trade, and watched them explain to me why what I do isn't possible. They'll bring up algorithmic trading. They'll talk about market efficiency. They'll cite academic studies about retail trader failure rates. You know what I don't do? I don't argue. I don't try to convince them. I don't pull up my brokerage statements to prove anything. Because it doesn't matter. Their doubt has nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own framework for understanding the world. They can't conceive of someone making money outside institutional structures. So they reject the possibility entirely. That's their limitation, not mine. This is why I keep my professional life private. When people ask what I do, I say I'm in the stock market, and I leave it at that. I don't say I day trade, I don't explain my strategy, I don't invite debate. And this approach has saved me countless hours of pointless conversations with people who will never understand what I do. My time is better spent analyzing markets, refining my edge, and actually trading. But here's the critical distinction I need you to understand. There's a massive difference between your social circle and your professional community. Your social circle, friends, family, coworkers from your old job. These are the people you implement information blackout with. But your professional community, other traders, entrepreneurs, people who have taken similar risks and walked similar paths, these are the people you should absolutely be talking to. This is what I call the community versus social circle framework. Your social circle exists within the traditional system. They think in terms of salaries, benefits, retirement accounts, and job security. They're not bad people, but they operate in a completely different paradigm than you do. Asking them for advice about trading is like asking a marathon runner how to prepare for a powerlifting competition. Different sport, different rules, different success metrics. Your professional community, on the other hand, understands your language. They know what it's like to risk capital. They understand drawdown periods. They've experienced the psychological warfare of watching everyone else climb corporate ladders while they sat alone studying charts. They can provide actual constructive feedback because they're operating within the same framework for success that you are. My mentor emphasized this constantly during my training. He told me, only talk trading with traders, only talk business with entrepreneurs. Everyone else will give you garbage advice based on a system you're actively trying to escape. And he was absolutely right. The most valuable conversations I've ever had about trading were with other people who trade. They understood the challenges I was facing. They could relate to the psychological battles. They offered insights that actually moved my performance forward. Meanwhile, the most useless conversations I've had were with well-meaning friends who don't trade trying to give me advice based on something they read in a Reddit thread or saw in a documentary. Have you tried using this indicator? I heard you should never risk more than 1% per trade. Wouldn't it be safer to just invest long-term? These people mean well, but their advice is fundamentally flawed because it's not rooted in actual experience. This is why building the right community is crucial. You need people around you who reinforce discipline, consistency, and a long-term perspective. You need people who understand that losing streaks happen. You need people who won't panic when you have a red month, because they've been through red months themselves. This type of support system doesn't tear you down. It builds you up. It doesn't introduce doubt. It reinforces belief grounded in actual market experience. So here's where we are. You've implemented information blackout with your social circle to eliminate cognitive noise and social friction. You've recognized that most people's doubt is actually projection of their own limitations. You've accepted the harsh truth that many people won't genuinely celebrate your success because it challenges their worldview. And you've built a professional community of traders and entrepreneurs who actually understand what you're doing. Now the question becomes, how do you maintain this discipline long-term? Because here's what happens to most traders. They start out quiet. They follow the information blackout protocol. But then they have their first winning week, and the excitement is overwhelming. They want to tell someone, so they break silence. They post a screenshot on social media. They tell their skeptical friend, "See, I told you this works." And immediately the doubt comes flooding back in. "Oh, you got lucky. Let's see if you can do it consistently." One win doesn't prove anything to people who don't want to believe. And the moment you start seeking validation from external sources, you've lost the plot. Your only validation should come from equity in your account and consistency in your results. Everything else is noise. This is the discipline that separates traders who make it from traders who don't. The ability to work in complete silence, to focus entirely on process and results, to resist the temptation to prove yourself to people who will never understand what you're doing. My mentor was profitable for 3 years before most people in his life even knew he was trading. 3 years. Think about that. He endured doubt, worked through losses, developed his edge, became consistently profitable, and sustained that profitability for 3 years before he started discussing it openly. Why? Because he understood that his success wasn't about other people's perception. It was about his bottom line, his freedom, his lifestyle. Those things speak for themselves. And that's the final piece of this framework. Let your lifestyle be the proof. When you're consistently profitable, when trading is genuinely working, the evidence will be undeniable. You'll have time freedom, you'll have financial flexibility, you'll be making decisions based on what you want to do, not what you have to do. Like, people will notice these changes without you saying a word, and when they ask how you did it, that's when you can choose whether or not to share your journey. But even then, be selective. Because even after you've proven yourself, even after you've been consistently profitable for years, there will still be doubters. There will still be people who think you're lying, exaggerating, or just lucky. And that's fine. Their belief is not required for your success. Your trading account doesn't care whether your old college roommate thinks day trading is real or not. The market doesn't validate you based on social approval. It validates you based on whether you can read price action, manage risk, and execute your strategy with discipline. So let me bring this full circle with something my mentor told me that fundamentally changed how I approached not just trading, but everything in life. He said, the people who matter don't need proof, and the people who need proof don't matter. Think about that. The people who genuinely support you, your real friends, your immediate family if you're fortunate, they don't need you to prove trading works. They trust you. They want you to succeed, regardless of the path you choose. And the people who demand proof, who need you to justify your decisions, who require constant validation of your choices, those people don't actually matter to your journey. Their approval or disapproval has zero impact on your results. This perspective shift is liberating. It removes the entire burden of social validation from your trading. You're no longer trading to prove anything to anyone. You're trading to build the life you want. And when that becomes your focus, when your energy is directed entirely toward mastery, consistency, and results, rather than external approval, that's when real growth happens. But here's what I need you to understand before we move forward. Everything I just explained about information blackout, social projection, and the envy trap, these aren't just psychological concepts to be aware of. They're active forces that will shape your trading journey, whether you acknowledge them or not. The question isn't whether you'll encounter doubt, skepticism, and social friction. You will. The question is whether you'll proactively defend against these forces, or whether you'll allow them to contaminate your mindset and sabotage your progress. And that decision, that choice to work in silence or to seek external validation, might be the most important strategic decision you make in your entire trading career. Because here's the brutal reality that most traders learn too late. Your belief system is the foundation of everything. Your strategy doesn't matter if you don't believe it works. Your risk management doesn't matter if you don't believe you can be profitable. Your discipline doesn't matter if you're constantly questioning whether this entire pursuit is even valid. And belief is fragile, especially in the beginning when you haven't seen consistent results yet. It can be shattered by a single conversation with the wrong person at the wrong time. I've watched this happen countless times. A trader comes into our community excited, motivated, ready to put in the work. Yeah, they're studying every day, taking notes, reviewing their trades, doing everything right. Then they disappear for a few weeks. When they come back, something's different. The energy is gone. The confidence is shaken. And when you ask what happened, the story is always the same. I told my dad I was learning to trade, and he spent an hour explaining why it's impossible. He showed me articles about retail traders losing money. He said I should focus on my career instead. And now I don't know if I can do this anymore. That's the cost of breaking information blackout. One conversation erased weeks of progress. Not because the father was malicious, he probably genuinely thought he was protecting his child from financial loss. But his well-intentioned doubt became a virus that infected the trader's belief system. And once doubt takes root, it's incredibly difficult to remove. It shows up in every trading decision. You hesitate on entries because you're not sure this is real. You exit winners early because you don't trust your analysis. You overtrade trying to prove to yourself that you can do this. The doubt becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why my mentor was so adamant about silence during my training. He'd seen too many talented people quit, not because they couldn't trade, but because they couldn't maintain belief in themselves long enough to develop their edge. The technical skills of trading aren't that complex. Support and resistance, trend identification, risk management, position sizing, these concepts can be learned in months. Why what takes years to develop is the psychological fortitude to trust your process when everyone around you is telling you it's impossible. And here's something crucial. The doubt doesn't just come from obvious skeptics. Sometimes it comes from people who think they're being supportive. Your mom says, "That's great, honey, but maybe you should keep your job just in case." Your girlfriend says, "I believe in you, but what if it doesn't work out? Shouldn't we have a backup plan?" Your best friend says, "I'm not saying you can't do it, but statistically most traders fail, so just be careful." These statements sound reasonable. They sound like care and concern. But listen to what they're actually communicating. "I don't think you'll succeed, so prepare for failure." That message, delivered repeatedly by people you love and trust, worms its way into your subconscious. You start preparing for failure instead of preparing for success. You start building exit plans instead of committing fully to the process. You start hedging your effort instead of going all in. My mentor refused to let that happen to me. He told me explicitly, "During your learning phase, you are off the grid. Nobody knows what you're doing. You wake up early to study before work. You tell people you're working out. You spend weekends backtesting strategies. You tell people you're working on a personal project. You take a day off to trade live during market hours. You tell people you had errands to run. The specifics don't matter. What matters is protecting the purity of your belief system while it's still developing." And I followed that advice religiously. For the first year of my trading journey, maybe 5 people total knew I was learning to trade. My mentor, obviously. 2 other traders I met through his network. And that's it. Not my parents. Not my siblings. Not my closest friends. Nobody. And you know what happened? I developed an unshakable belief that trading was possible because the only feedback I received came from people who were actually doing it successfully. When I had questions, I asked traders who'd overcome the same obstacles. When I struggled with a concept, I got guidance from people who'd mastered it. When I had a losing streak, I talked to people who understood that losses are part of the process and could help me analyze what went wrong without making me question the entire pursuit. My belief system was built on a foundation of actual competence and experience, not on the uninformed opinions of people who'd never placed a trade. Now contrast that with the trader who tells everyone they're getting feedback from all directions. Their uncle thinks it's gambling. Their coworker thinks they should invest in index funds instead. Their spouse is worried about the financial risk. Their college friend who works at Goldman Sachs thinks retail traders can't compete. All of these voices create conflicting narratives in the trader's mind. And when they sit down to trade, they're not executing their strategy. They're trying to reconcile 15 different opinions about what they should be doing. That's cognitive noise at its worst. And it's completely avoidable. The information blackout isn't about being secretive or dishonest. It's about creating the optimal environment for skill development. When you're learning piano, you don't practice in a crowded restaurant where everyone's commenting on your mistakes. You practice in private until you're good enough to perform. Trading is no different. You need that private space to make mistakes, to learn, to develop competence without the pressure of external judgment. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about accountability? Don't you need people to hold you accountable to your goals? Here's the truth. Accountability from people who don't understand trading is worthless. Actually, it's worse than worthless because it's accountability to the wrong metrics. Your non-trading friend will hold you accountable to whether you're making money yet after 2 weeks. They'll ask if you've figured it out after a month. They're measuring success in time frames and terms that have nothing to do with actual trading development. Real accountability comes from your trading community. Other traders will hold you accountable to whether you followed your rules, whether you reviewed your trades, whether you're managing risk properly, whether you're putting in the screen time needed to develop pattern recognition. These are the metrics that actually matter. These are the behaviors that lead to long-term profitability. And you can only get this type of accountability from people who understand the game you're playing. Here's another dimension most traders don't consider. The information blackout protects you from becoming a performance monkey. What do I mean by that? When people know you're trading, they start asking for updates. How's trading going? Did you make money today? What did you trade? How much did you make? And suddenly you're performing for an audience instead of focusing on process. You start feeling pressure to have impressive results to report. You start taking trades you shouldn't take because you want to have something exciting to share. This is incredibly dangerous because it shifts your motivation from internal to external. You're no longer trading because you want to build a skill and achieve financial independence. You're trading because you want to prove to others that you can do it. And that subtle shift in motivation changes everything. It makes you impatient. It makes you take excessive risk. It makes you deviate from your plan because you're chasing validation instead of chasing excellence. I see this all the time on social media. Traders posting every single trade they take, narrating their P&L throughout the day, seeking likes and comments as validation. And I get it. The dopamine hit from social validation feels good. But it's poison for your trading. Because what happens when you have a losing day and you've built an audience expecting to see wins? Now you're dealing with embarrassment on top of the financial loss. Now you're tempted to hide losses or worse, revenge trade, to get back to even so you don't have to post a red day. The information blackout eliminates this entire dynamic. Nobody's watching. Nobody's expecting updates. Nobody knows if you made money or lost money today. Your only measure of success is your own trading journal and your account balance. That's it. And that purity of focus is incredibly powerful because it allows you to be completely honest with yourself about your performance without the filter of how it will be perceived by others. Let me share something personal here. About 2 years into my trading journey, I went through a 3-month drawdown period. My strategy was solid, but I was overtrading and letting small losses turn into bigger losses by not cutting them fast enough. It was a painful period of my development, but it was also one of the most valuable because it forced me to really tighten up my discipline and risk management. Now imagine if I had been public about my trading during that period. Imagine if I had family members asking, "So are you still losing money?" Imagine if I had friends saying, "See, I told you this was risky." Imagine if I had an audience on social media watching me struggle. The psychological weight of that external pressure, combined with the internal challenge of fixing my mistakes, would have been crushing. I might have quit. I might have blown up my account taking reckless trades, trying to prove I could still do it. But because I was silent, because nobody knew I was going through that drawdown, I could focus entirely on solving the problem. I reviewed every single trade I took during that period. I identified the patterns in my mistakes. I implemented new rules to prevent those mistakes. I reduced my position size until I proved I could follow the rules consistently. And eventually I came out of that drawdown stronger and more disciplined than before. That experience made me a better trader, but only because I had the psychological space to work through it privately. This is what I mean when I say, the information blackout is your first layer of defense in psychological risk management. It's not just about avoiding negativity. It's about creating the conditions where you can develop as a trader without interference, where you can make mistakes and learn from them without judgment, where you can go through difficult periods without external pressure, where you can focus purely on the craft of trading instead of managing other people's perceptions and opinions. Now, I want to be clear about something. This doesn't mean you lie to people. If someone directly asks what you're doing with your time, you can be vague without being dishonest. I'm working on some personal projects. I'm learning about financial markets. I'm developing a skill. These statements are all true. You just don't need to elaborate. You don't need to invite conversation about something that people won't understand anyway. And look, I know some of you are thinking, well, but what if I'm really excited about trading and I just want to share that excitement with someone? I get it. That's a natural human impulse. But channel that excitement into your trading community. Find other people who are on the same journey, join a Discord server for traders, attend a local trading meetup, connect with people through trading forums or social media who actually understand what you're doing. Share your excitement with people who can relate to it and who will encourage you rather than discourage you. Because here's what most people don't realize. Excitement is energy, and energy needs to go somewhere. If you channel your excitement into conversations with skeptics, that energy gets drained defending your choices instead of improving your trading. But if you channel it into conversations with other traders, that energy gets amplified. You feed off each other's motivation, You share insights. You push each other to improve. That's the productive use of excitement. My mentor used to say, "Guard your energy like you guard your capital." And he was absolutely right. Every conversation where you have to justify trading to a skeptic is energy you could have spent studying charts. Every argument about whether trading is gambling is mental bandwidth you could have used to review your trades. Every moment of doubt triggered by someone's negative comment is psychological capital you could have invested in building confidence. Energy is finite. Protect it fiercely. And here's the thing. The people who truly care about you will respect your focus, even if they don't understand what you're focused on. You don't need to explain trading to them. You just need to show them, through your actions, that you're serious, disciplined, and committed to something meaningful. They'll see you putting in hours of work. They'll see you developing a skill. They'll see you becoming more knowledgeable about markets and economics. That's enough. They don't need to understand the specifics of your strategy or validate your chosen path. In fact, the people who demand that you justify your pursuit of trading are usually the ones who have the most insecurity about their own choices. Think about it. Someone who's genuinely confident and fulfilled in their own life doesn't need you to follow the same path they did. They're comfortable with you taking a different route. But someone who has doubts about their own choices, who maybe regrets not taking risks, who feels trapped in their situation, they need you to validate their path by following it too. Your divergence threatens their narrative, and that's why they pressure you to conform. Understanding this psychology changes how you view those conversations entirely. It's not about you, it's about them. And once you realize that, it becomes easier to smile, nod, and keep your plans to yourself. You're not being secretive. You're being strategic. You're protecting your psychological capital so you can invest it where it actually generates returns, in your trading development. Now let's talk about what happens when you do eventually become consistently profitable and you start sharing your success. This is where the lifestyle proof of concept becomes important. Because even after you've made it, even after you've achieved what most people said was impossible, there will still be doubters. And the way you handle that reveals everything about whether you've truly internalized these lessons or not. The amateur profitable trader feels the need to prove themselves to everyone. They pull up their brokerage statements. They explain their strategy in detail to people who don't care. They argue with skeptics, trying to convince them that trading is real, and they wear their success like a badge that requires constant validation from others. This is exhausting and it's a waste of energy. The professional, profitable trader lets results speak for themselves. They live the life they want to live. They make the choices they want to make. They have the freedom they worked for. And when people ask questions, they give simple answers without elaboration. How do you afford to travel so much? I manage my money well. How do you have so much free time? I work efficiently. What do you do for work? I'm in the markets. Notice, what's happening here? You're not lying, but you're not opening the door to long conversations about trading with people who won't understand anyway. You're living proof of concept, but you're not wasting energy trying to convince anyone of anything. Your lifestyle communicates success. Your freedom speaks louder than any explanation ever could. And the people who are genuinely curious, who ask thoughtful follow-up questions, who seem genuinely interested in understanding, those are the people you might choose to open up to. But even then, you're selective. Because here's what I've learned over 5 years of trading. The vast majority of people who ask about trading aren't actually interested in doing the work. They're interested in the results without the process. They want to know if there's a shortcut, a secret strategy, a way to make quick money without years of study and practice. And when you explain that it took you years to develop your edge, that you went through countless losing trades, that you had to completely rewire your psychology, they lose interest immediately. And they don't want to hear about the reality of trading. They want to hear that it's easy, and they can do it too. And when you tell them the truth, that it's simple but not easy, that it requires discipline most people don't have, that it takes years of dedicated effort, they either think you're gatekeeping or they decide it's not worth the effort. Either way, the conversation was a waste of time for both of you. This is why the information blackout extends even past profitability for most serious traders. Not because they're trying to hide anything, but because they've learned through experience that most people can't handle the truth about what it takes to succeed at trading. They'd rather believe it's luck or a scam than accept that someone else had the discipline and commitment they lacked. And arguing with that kind of mindset is like trying to teach physics to someone who doesn't believe in gravity. It's pointless. So let me bring all of this together into a clear framework you can actually implement. From the moment you decide to pursue trading seriously, you enter information blackout mode with your social circle. This means friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances. Unless they're traders themselves, they don't know what you're doing. You channel all your excitement, questions, and updates into your trading community. You build relationships with other traders who understand the journey because they're on it too. You focus entirely on process over results. You don't measure your progress by how much money you're making yet. You measure it by whether you're following your rules, whether you're reviewing your trades, whether you're putting in the screen time, whether you're improving your pattern recognition and decision-making. These process metrics are what lead to profitability. The money is just a byproduct of doing the process correctly over a long enough time horizon. You protect your belief system like it's your most valuable asset, because it is. Every conversation with a skeptic is a potential virus. Every well-meaning but misguided piece of advice is a potential distraction. You guard your psychological capital ruthlessly, spending it only on activities and conversations that move you closer to your goal of becoming a consistently profitable trader. And here's the beautiful irony in all of this. By working in silence, by refusing to seek external validation, by focusing purely on your own development, you actually accelerate your progress. And because you're not wasting energy on anything except the actual work of becoming a better trader, you're not dealing with doubt, you're not managing other people's expectations, you're not performing for an audience, you're just trading, learning, improving, growing. And that's exactly where all your energy should be going. What you now understand is that silence isn't about secrecy, it's about survival. The biggest threat to your trading success isn't market volatility or lack of capital. It's the contamination of your belief system by people who operate in a completely different paradigm than the one you're trying to enter. We covered why information blackout is psychological risk management, not paranoia. We talked about how doubt spreads like a contagion and why most people's skepticism is just projection of their own limitations. And we explored the harsh truth about envy and why many people, even those close to you, don't actually want you to succeed because your success threatens their worldview. we discussed why your lifestyle should do the talking, not your words. And we distinguished between your social circle, where silence protects you, and your trading community, where open conversation accelerates your growth. Here's the mindset shift. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the path you're choosing. Your job isn't to convince skeptics that trading is possible. Your job is to become consistently profitable while protecting the psychological space you need to develop that skill. Work in silence. Let results speak. And remember, the people who matter don't need proof, and the people who need proof don't matter. If that framework resonates with you, you know what to do. And if you're already trading in silence, keep going. You're on the right path.